Well, we're back after 3 nice days off. Joe Rayo and Joe Choppy. I'm the Choppy, he's the Rayo. And this is the
Joe and Joe Weather Show. Yay!
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 Yay! And of course, the Joe and Joe Weather Show is, as it is every night, and also other things that are on almost every day, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, right in Suffolk County on Long Island, 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town. OmniTrueValue.com is the website, and Wholesale Holiday Lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs, whether you want your home decorated professionally or maybe, just maybe, you want to do this as a business because we've got Halloween coming and Christmas coming and other holidays. And they're at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York, also on Long Island. And their telephone number is 631-957-5106. So give them a call or go to their website, liholidaylighting.com. So, Joe, I'm going to put this as straightforward, and I'm going to say this as short as I can say it. But obviously, I missed you for the last several days. But you know what? We needed to recharge after last weekend. I will say that there are some storms that when you look at them from the onset, when they're in their development stage, just tell you that it's going to be a powerhouse. And that's kind of how I've been feeling about now Tropical Storm Ida that has formed in the northwestern northwestern Caribbean. I think everything that I've seen in the last 5 or 6 days, and particularly over the last couple of days, has just jumped off the page at me, saying that this is going to be a powerhouse in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out over the next 3 days.
You know, Joe, I absolutely agree with you. In fact, I'm looking at all the information concerning Ida. It, to me, is waving a red flag or almost screaming Cat 3, Cat 3, Cat 3.
Oh, easily.
It is looking very much, and it's coming at the same time as Katrina back in 2005, late August. It is invading the same part of the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf coastal area that Katrina entered. I would not be at all surprised if we saw a very rapid intensification of this system as it moved in on the Gulf Coast sometime during the latter part of this upcoming weekend. So I agree with you. I think when you compare it to all the systems we have seen so far, including our most recent friend, which visited us back over this past weekend, I think this one, Ida, is going to be quite a bit to deal with.
Yeah, we could do a post-mortem on that later on, but I want to get to Ida front and center, and I've got a tight loop, one of the floater loops that are up on the Go site, and it is really astounding. You know, Joe, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I know you've probably done it with some storms. I actually have them somewhere packed away in a box, but I actually have the copies of the paper advisories from Hurricane Camille. Now, I'm not trying to make a comparison here. That's a comparison that happens when storms are all done with and you can look back. But the point I'm making is that the tropical wave that wound up developing into that storm moved into the Northwest Caribbean, and I just remember reading how the first recon flight, they hadn't even upgraded it to a tropical depression, even though that they were getting reports of 60 and 70 mile an hour winds from thunderstorms in the tropical wave. The first time the plane got there, it found a closed center with 60 knot winds. So from the get-go, it kind of told you that this thing was going to be a bit special. Now, from a meteorological standpoint. And the thing that caught my eye was how much this has developed since yesterday, when the first thunderstorm clusters were forming around the tropical wave down at around 13 or 14 north and at about 75 or so west. And in just 24 hours, I mean, it has just absolutely blossomed. You can see there's a well-defined circulation. You're starting to get that feathering that you always look for. You see that feathering on the cirrus and the outflow. That's all beginning to happen. I know that he talked about a minimal amount of shear that is there, but it's minimal. Everything here on the satellite loop says strengthening to me, and it's going to get even more so, I think, when we get into the Gulf of Mexico. Saturday is going to be a very interesting day for looking at recon reports.
And they did say on the recent technical discussion that the initial intensity remains at 30 knots, pending the aircraft fully sampling the eastern portion of the circulation, and that's coming our way in the hours to come. So after they get all that data in, I'm sure that we'll be seeing things kind of jump.
Well, they already upgraded it to a tropical storm. They did at 5:30. They sent out a special advisory.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So,
and I have the recon, by the way, that's there now. Two center plots from 1,007 on the first fix to 1,006 on the next one. And if you look on the east side, there is a belt there of the yellow. That's all 45 to 50 knot winds. So when the Hurricane Center saw that they closed off a center and they saw that belt of winds, they had to send an immediate upgrade. It's kind of funny because they timed, I don't know.
You're right about the immediate upgrade, because they put out the discussion at 5 o'clock, and at 5:20, 20 minutes later, up comes the Air Force plane finding the depression a tropical storm. So that was pretty quick. You're right, Ed. I didn't see that when I was looking over the NHC website just a few moments ago.
Joe Radio's monitoring the chat board tonight because I cannot see it. I'm on one monitor tonight, so that kind of limits me as to what I can see and read. So if you've got questions, and certainly I know you have comments, Joe, you keep an eye on Super Chat and just let us know what's going on. So there's the recon, and it's still in there. But I want to put, I brought up, set this up ahead of the show. I wanted to bring up they mentioned the sea surface water temperatures, the water temperatures, the sea surface water temperatures. That's obvious, it's redundant. The water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico, and they pointed to the fact that there is this warm eddy. And I said, let me take a look at this. And in fact, there is a rather large warm eddy, and you can see here on the contour, 30 degrees Celsius. So that's the border of 86-degree water that starts out at about 60 miles northeast of western Cuba, and then overspreads the entire north-central Gulf of Mexico until you get to the shelf water in Louisiana. And there, we're looking at water temperatures that are in the upper 80s to around 90 degrees. A month from now, or as soon as the first cold front makes it down to the Gulf states, that shelf water cools. So you can think back to storms that have been in the Gulf in late September and October. Sometimes they talk about the fact that the shelf water is a lot cooler than the surrounding water that's further offshore and can oftentimes knock a storm down a peg or two as it approaches. Not by a lot, but it still could knock it down. The top winds 10 or 20 miles an hour. But in this particular instance, we have the opposite here. We've got this pool of we have a warm eddy, and then on top of that, we've got shelf water along the Louisiana coast, Joe, that has water temperatures up close to 90. And just to put it into perspective, I drew a graphic here, and let me see if this is So this is the hurricane. Basically, this is the Hurricane Center's forecast track, and Ida is going to go right over and through the entire warm eddy once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico and rides all the way up into the coast. And I mean, right now it is looking like it's going to be southeast Louisiana. So from the standpoint of the storm riding over the absolute warmest waters, And 86-degree water can easily support a Category 3. It can even support storms stronger than that. It's going to have the very warm Gulf water playing in its favor.
Yeah, and we saw this last, I forget which storm it was, but I think I mentioned it
Was
was
it
right about this
Laura?
time. I think it may have been Laura. I said last year that and a very similar setup here. We were looking at very warm water, and I said, we have seen cases on more than a few occasions where these storms, they come in and almost overnight. Katrina is the most notable example. Almost overnight, the darn thing just goes up by one category. In this case, I'm sure that as the storm approaches and once it moves over that warm eddy, as you pointed out, Joe, we're going to see very rapid intensification. And yeah, the Cat 3 certainly, and we might even be looking at a Category 4. Dare I say, maybe even a Cat 5.
Well,
It's not totally out of the question, considering what we saw with storms like Andrew and Camille, and one storm that's not often mentioned. I don't think it got to Cat 5, but it got very close. Hugo, back in the late '80s. I mean,
yeah.
we're in the time of the year now when this kind of stuff happens. And Ida, I agree with you. As soon as I saw Ida earlier today, I said, this this one is cruising for a bruising.
Well, look, you know if the Hurricane Center is the way they work. Sometimes you have to read between the lines. I mean, obviously, we read the technical discussions, which anybody can get their hand on and read from nhc.noaa.gov. But it was very interesting to me how they worded this starting from today, even in the tropical weather outlooks. You could see that they're looking, I think they're looking at this and they're looking at the upper air setup, which I'm going to get to, and saying, you know what, this could be a problem. And I think that was reflected in the tone, because the tropical weather outlook is the one that goes out to the public. But if you read that paragraph in there where they already talking about, interests in the Gulf Coast and all the rest of it, it was just worded in such a way that I was like, whoa, these guys are kind of thinking maybe that this could be, and I had the same notion, but they kind of put it out publicly that they're thinking that this could be, something serious. And I think it is something serious. You don't usually hear me say that, but I'm thinking that this could wind up being something serious for the Central Gulf Coast.
Absolutely. By the way, William Huber says, Joe R, tell Joe C, welcome back to the hot island. And
Yes.
You are back, right?
Oh my God, Joe! It was I was outside today. I thought like I was standing in the Home Depot parking lot back in Georgia, but then again I could just run home to where I was 2,200 feet up, and I have not seen a 90-degree day, and I've been going down in the low to mid 60s at night, and I'm thinking, get me back home get me back down south where it's cooler.
I tell you, Joe, it has been it's been quite a summer. Actually, the summer started off rather slowly up here. In fact, a lot of people may have already forgotten that Memorial Day weekend at the end of May, where temperatures in some cases had a tough time breaking 50, and then
Right.
all of a sudden in July we started ramping up. But July was also, not only was it very warm and humid, it was also one of the wettest Julys on record at Central Park, the number 3 on the list.
Yeah, it also actually came in a little like a fraction of a degree cooler than average,
right?
because of all the rain.
And August has been something else altogether. I had the great pleasure yesterday accompanying my wife and my daughter. We went to the Dutchess County Fair. We usually do this every year. Didn't do it, of course, last year because of COVID, but we did it this year. We did it yesterday. And in the aftermath, checking things out here on the home weather station, 5 o'clock, it was 94 degrees.
Oh.
So we were walking around with 94 degree temperature. And I was also, every year I always like to go to the guy who sells the homemade pickles and garlic and whatever. And I was carrying along like a 7-pound bag of jars of various varieties of pickles. Now you carry around 7 pounds of anything in 94-degree temperature, and it was a day yesterday. One of those one of the one of those days which I said when we were out, shoveling snow or walking around in cold weather in only about maybe 4 or 5 months. I'm going to say I'm going to be thinking back on yesterday when it, when it was like beads of sweat forming on your forehead or whatever.
Yeah.
But in any case, it was hot, but we don't have to worry about any tropical systems in the interim up here. Although we may see some thunderstorm activity, I guess, tomorrow, won't we?
Yeah, and we're going to get to the local stuff also before it's all said and done. All right, so let me get back to Ida here. This is the Hurricane Center's forecast. On their official forecast, they take it to 95 knots before landfall, which should be 110 miles an hour, so just under major status. But I think it's pretty well implied that it probably will be stronger than that. And I just want to show you, I saved this from earlier. And we bring this up with respect to the upper air winds when we're talking about wind shear and whether conditions are favorable for tropical cyclone formation or if they're favorable for strengthening. This is quite a favorable setup for strengthening. And I'm going to jump off of this and go back to the U.S. satellite now. Think back to Tropical Storm Fred. If you remember, we had an upper low sitting off the coast of northwest Florida, and that upper low created wind shear that impacted Fred as it was moving across the northern part of the Caribbean Sea. Well, it's a similar setup this time around, at least initially, but the big difference is, if you look at what's going on off the Florida coast, that upper low, which was actually quite obvious yesterday, has weakened considerably and is going to pretty much disappear. Now we have another upper low in the Western Gulf, far away from this, but it's setting up in a way that it's going to drop a trough down into the southwestern Gulf of Mexico and create a very strong outflow pattern with this. So you've got the storm actually sitting completely underneath an upper high, which is ideal. Combining that with the troughing that will drop down to the west of it and the disappearance of the upper low to the northeast, and you have a setup here that screams rapid strengthening, particularly when it gets into that warm eddy, Joe. The upper air conditions in the Gulf of Mexico are going to be ideal for rapid strengthening here. And the global models are showing it, although they don't necessarily bring those pressures all the way down. But I can see this being a lot deeper than what the models are indicating.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And again, landfall looks like it's going to be in the latter part of the upcoming weekend, probably sometime on Sunday.
Sunday afternoon.
And once again, it's sad to note, there was a time when it looked like Florida would almost act like as a magnet and attract all these tropical systems. In recent years, it seems like Louisiana has had the bullseye on it, and it looks like this is again another possible landfall or land hit for Louisiana, and of course we'll hear a lot from New Orleans, I'm sure, in the coming days ahead.
Agreed. And here, by the way, is let me see which run did I get here. This is the 18Z run of the GFS. And you can follow it along from tonight through tomorrow evening, crossing the west coast of Cuba later tomorrow afternoon, emerging on the other side, and it just beelines northwest, barely even nudging in either direction. By the way, on the lower left, that is Tropical Storm Nora that is on the Pacific side. And interestingly enough, Joe, going back a few days ago, I think you could have also made the case, because the models were showing both these systems. But if you go back several days ago, the development of Nora potentially could have created a rather large area of unfavorable conditions in the Gulf of Mexico. But this was when the models were showing Ida going almost straight west into the southwest Gulf. But now, instead of that, you have the distance between the two of them far enough that you're setting up this rather ideal setup. So Nora effectively has gone from trying to perhaps shear Tropical Storm Ida to aiding in its strengthening by that further distance apart and the weaker ridge that's off the Atlantic coast that's allowing this to just kind of move on a straight northwest course rather than go more westward.
And you know what else, Joe? When we were looking last week at Henri, we were waiting for the European model to signal that yes, indeed, there was some kind of a tropical system out there. It never really did until virtually the last minute. But here we are now. We're about 96 hours away from this storm. I just want to show you if you have.
You have it. Just let me bring you back, put you back on the screen here. Go ahead.
I want to show you what the European is showing for Ida. This is 96 hours ahead. This is I think it's signaling, Joe, that there's going to be some kind of a major system impacting Louisiana by 12Z Monday. It's certainly for all of you out there who were scratching your head last week and saying, well, why doesn't it show Henri or whatever? Well, maybe it didn't show Henri, but it sure as heck showing Ida. That is a very potent system that the European is signaling or red flagging for Monday morning, and more likely landfall coming probably sometime Sunday night. And that to me, Joe, just eyeballing that to me says Cat 3 right there. If not stronger. So. And
by the way, the models seem to be behaving. They seem to be behaving in the way now that they usually do with these systems, where the European is on the left side of the envelope and the GFS is on the right side of the envelope, but the spread is relatively tight. They're relatively close to each other. It'll just be a matter of zeroing in on the landfall. And interestingly enough, someone else commented on the chat on the last show that we did, perhaps it was on my Weather in 5 video today, and they made a great point about how the challenges of forecasting in the Gulf of Mexico are so much different than the challenges in the East Coast, because when they get into the Gulf of Mexico, the outcomes are either dissipation or landfall. There's no other choice. It's landlocked. So you know that it's going to hit somewhere. You just have to kind of zero in on where, which makes life a whole lot easier than what we have to deal with on the East Coast, where oftentimes, because of the huge geography running up from Florida to southern New England, your options are almost infinite. So the challenge of forecasting on the East Coast is a lot higher than the challenge. Not that it isn't a challenge to forecast in the Gulf of Mexico when you're dealing with a powerhouse, but it's a whole different world. And that was a great point that person made. I can't pull up the actual quote at the moment, but before the show is over with, I'm going to try to do that so I can give the gentleman credit. And thank you, by the way.
Latex Streams is saying, Rayo, you need to combine NAM and Euro. Well, first of all, I just showed you the 96-hour Euro, and the NAM only goes out to 84 hours. So I can't really show you where the NAM is depicting the storm much beyond 84 hours. But it will be interesting once we get the NAM into the picture too, how that handles this particular impending storm. And by the way, thank you very much to Robert Russo, who actually at the very beginning of the show tonight, hit Super Chats, and we thank Robert very much for that.
Thank you, Robert. And speaking of the NAM, just for laughs, the NAM only going out to 84 hours is the furthest left of all the models. But we know how the NAM likes to take things to the left, as we just experienced. And it has it close to Houston. But I dare say that as we get closer to landfall, that we're going to wind up seeing something more in line with the hurricane tracking models, which, by the way, there was no, for some reason, I'm not sure why, but there was no 18Z run of the model guidance. The last run I have here is the 12Z, unless it's a tropical tidbits issue. But you can see from the tracking models how tight the easternmost track is, right over New Orleans and Lake Pontchartrain. The westernmost track is somewhere halfway between Lafayette and Lake Charles. I mean, that is not a big that's not a big spread there. Maybe the spread is about 100 or 120 miles tops from the east to the west. So, and the global models kind of lie right in there. So I think the confidence is higher than it normally would be because of how these models are handling Ida.
And Johnny Quest is asking the two of us about, and you just answered the question, Joe, by showing the model track guidance. He's asking about, will the storm go up the gap between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula or go over Cuba itself? And it seems like most of the models want to take it at least over the far western end of Cuba. And while admittedly that's not going to weaken the storm system as much as, let's say, a direct track over central Cuba or, dare we say, Haiti, for example, there may be some slight diminishing of the storm intensity, but in all,
that's a very narrow
very,
stretch,
very narrow.
and it's also very flat there. The mountains are all on the east side. The part of western Cuba is relatively flat. So it'll probably have. I think it'll probably have minimal impact on.
Well, like I said, a slight dent, so to speak, in the strength
for a few hours.
Right. And let me tell you, Cuba, considering what will likely happen to the storm after it departs Cuba, Cuba's getting off easy. I mean, this is going to be a dangerous storm, no question about it. And I'm sure that the murmurings have already begun in and around New Orleans, and also maybe the adjacent states as well. Maybe Mississippi, and maybe one or two, people, beginning to scream, "Oh, look out!" In eastern Texas.
Well, what about also one thing to consider too? Those horrible floods that they had in Tennessee after it goes inland. That same area is going to wind up getting into the remnant rains of this. But that's the second part of this equation is what happens after it goes inland. So that is something to certainly be considered. That same area that was devastated by those floods back a few days ago could wind up seeing another round of flooding. And by the way, here's the intensity guidance where most of them take it to at least a Cat 1. And then you've got a few of them up at Cat 2 and three of them actually take it up to Cat 3. So again, this is the 12Z. I don't know what the 18Z is, and I don't think we'll have the 0Z out in time, before the show is over. But I'm going to, at least from what we're seeing in terms of the puzzle pieces here, this has every chance, I think, of probably becoming a major hurricane.
Yeah, this is unlike Henri. I mean, this go around, we have more than a few that are pushing up toward Category 3, and not just barely into Cat 3. I mean, there you see for yourself, we have three different models which are well beyond the boundary between 2 and 3. And I have a feeling, Joe, that before this is all over said and done, we're going to be seeing a portion of the Category 4 zone come into play with the model intensity guidance. So it's this is going to be a very well put together and very potent storm. To quote one of the astronauts, I don't know if you ever remember the movie Marooned.
Yes.
Where that was done in the 1970s, and one of the astronauts had a little bit of knowledge of meteorology, and he was looking down at the first hurricane, which eventually would play into the storyline of the season, and I don't remember the name of the storm, but I do remember, he's looking at it from outer space and he says, "Oh, look at the outflow and look at, pointing out various varieties of the characteristics on." And he finally paused and said, "She's going to become one huge beast." and I think we could say the same looking at from what we see right now. I think Ida is going to become a pretty beastie storm as well. Oh, wait a minute. I can't say that on Facebook, can I? No, I can't. Well, I said it anyway.
Well, no, we're not on Facebook. We're on YouTube.
Yes, but I put our Joe and Joe show on Facebook. But
Oh, they're not.
well, they
You
can.
put the link up on Facebook. The show is not playing on Facebook, and
Correct.
I don't think we don't do Facebook lives anymore anyway. So
Yes. Yes.
because we like YouTube a whole lot better. Uh, Here's the upper air, and also think back to Grace from last week when we had that big ridge from the Atlantic building that had built across the Gulf states. The remnant of that ridge is still there. You've got a trough that's dropping into the northwestern part of the U.S. And here is what represents, and I have the map advanced already till tomorrow afternoon. Here's your upper high off the North Carolina coast. Ida's that's circle there over western Cuba. And at least from here, the way the ridge is oriented, you could make a case for it going, still moving northwestward here. The question would be going forward after Friday, is that ridge building westward or is it weakening? Well, it's kind of weakening and repositioning itself. You see the upper high kind of pivots into North Carolina and Virginia, and there's a weakness there in the Western Gulf. And of course, you also see Nora there on the lower left, the upper feature representing Nora coming into the coast of Mexico. And all this one does is basically follows the periphery right there, the periphery of the upper high that is sitting right over the mid-Atlantic coast. Of course, here in the Northeast, we're going to be kind of struggling with this backdoor cold front that's going to come on through and stall out probably somewhere in southern New Jersey. So that's going to be fun trying to forecast this weekend for sure. But watch what happens when we go into next week, though. The ridge really weakens big time, and then suddenly we've got this trough in eastern Canada, and an arm comes around that trough and sort of opens up whatever's left of Ida and then swings it towards the coast. That's a cool looking. When I say cool looking, I mean it both ways. It looks cool that the upper air, that's wow. The upper air is doing that, and this is also going to set up for maybe some real humidity relief with this kind of trough. If the model's correct, with this kind of trough going into the Labor Day holiday weekend, Joe. Look at that. That's a decent shot of cool air coming into the east, if that's correct.
Right. And Renata did a double take when I took a look at the maps earlier, and she said, "So how's it look for the weekend?" I said, "Would you believe this weekend there's a chance, at least it's on the table, there's a chance on Saturday that some parts of the Hudson Valley may not get above 70 degrees." And she like what? Excuse me? I mean, we had another day today where it was 94. And I mean, that's going to be quite a fall down if that indeed happens. And again, in lieu of that, we may see some scattered thunderstorms. We're not too far away. I saw a Storm Prediction Center had placed our area not too far out from the marginal risk of severe weather for tomorrow and tomorrow evening.
Yes. In fact, I'm just about to bring that up. I brought up the U.S. loop again as we look at weather across the Northeast and mid-Atlantic states tonight. There have been some thunderstorms that blew up this evening, some scattered storms that are around, and you can see them on the satellite, these little clusters that have popped up there and also back through the lower lakes. The radar, I'll give that a shot here, just a second. And let me make sure I switched back. Yes, I did. I'm being very good, Joe, about trying to make sure I switch everything correctly. I noticed a few cells earlier this evening. There was one particular one that was in Ocean County in central New Jersey that just kind of popped up and sat there and has sort of played itself out. We're seeing a few cells like that in eastern Pennsylvania around Allentown. And there's another one, there's a smaller one somewhere very close to Trenton. You've got a cluster in southwest PA and in northwestern Virginia, some of them producing a couple of flash flood warnings. Nothing near in northeast Georgia, so I'm happy about that. And we've got some thunderstorms, some patches there in Indiana, also just north and east of St. Louis, on the Illinois side and on the Missouri side, up in northeastern Iowa, back up through Minnesota. Scattered around the Rockies, also some showers and storms, and even a little bit of shower activity in the Pacific Northwest. The Storm Prediction Center Has, by the way, slight to enhanced risk in areas of South Dakota, northern Nebraska, Iowa, southern Minnesota, northwestern Illinois, southwestern Wisconsin. There's an enhanced risk area there you see in southern Minnesota and northern Iowa, and a very, very tiny portion of southeastern South Dakota. For tomorrow, they added some risk, marginal risk in much of eastern, south central, southeastern Pennsylvania, just kind of touching western New Jersey, most of Maryland into northeastern Virginia, and you can see the slight risk up in the upper Mississippi Valley to the western lakes, and also back up into the northern plains. And then we'll move to day 3, which is for Sunday. General thunderstorms in the east, slight risk in the upper Midwest. And by the way, the rainfall amounts, they've suddenly, this is interesting. I think this is the latest one, Joe, from WPC. So now, and I think this is because the bulk of this is probably going to come from remnant rains, perhaps from Ida. They've got areas of 2 to 3 inches or more over Pennsylvania, New Jersey, just to the west, New York City west, down to Maryland. Some of this is convective, but I think a good chunk of this may be from Ida. And by the way, the Ida rains, a 10 to 15 inch area of rain being indicated over southeastern Louisiana and southern Mississippi.
Well, well, I'm not going to say I can't, because in a couple of cases, most notably Irene and Floyd, over the last 20 some odd years, we have seen those kind of rainfall totals up here. But every time they happen, it's like you shake your head and you can't believe it. Folks down there see that a lot more than what we have up here. And what are you going to do? What are you going to tell people down in Louisiana about that kind of potential? And it could very well happen with Ida, because again, as we have been saying all along, Ida looks like a very, very potent weather system. I'm just mad, Joe, that this upcoming weekend, it looked for a while like this high, and that's a fairly significant high. 1029, 1030 millibar high centered over James Bay on Friday. And you say to yourself, okay, now that'll push on down and bring us at least a semi-decent or a decent weekend. And as you pointed out earlier, this front, this weather front just stalls right over the tri-state area tomorrow night, then edges just to the south, just enough to stay close enough to maintain cloud cover and maintain precipitation. And that high building, again, it's a pretty big high, continuing to increase in intensity to like a 1031, 1032 during the day on Saturday. And we get that sweep of northeasterly wind. And I don't care if it's the middle of July, the middle of June, the middle of August. But and I don't care if you're coming off of a 90 to 95 degree stretch like we have. You place that wind, that flow from the north or northeast, and combine that with clouds and lingering precipitation. And we could have a tough time on Saturday breaking 70, at least here in the Hudson Valley. And it also looks like, because of the stalling nature and maybe a wave of low pressure developing on that front as it stalls out or subsides just to our south, that we could see some pretty significant range, as you just pointed out, especially from New York City on south and west. And they do have a slew of flood watches posted across much of central and South Jersey in advance of that possibility for Saturday.
Do you remember back a few weeks ago when we had something similar to this, and we had that very weak little low that just sort of formed? This was probably in the early part of July or the middle part of July. We had a little low that formed off the Maryland coast, and just kind of, the models initially really didn't show very much with it. And it turned out that we had soaking rains on Long Island and parts of New Jersey for a good chunk of the weekend. But if you look close on this last run of the GFS, there is actually on Sunday a little low there. It's one tiny closed isobar that's just southeast of Chesapeake Bay. You got the high pressing down, 3 isobars showing an east wind. And in fact, I think you can make a case, at least from this last couple of runs, that front gets a little bit further to the south. It gets down, more like into the Delmarva Peninsula rather than across central New Jersey. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether the high builds in enough that you actually get some, drying up, come down from the north, at least up your way, in the lower and middle Hudson Valley, maybe interior Connecticut and points north. But it just makes for a very, very difficult forecast this weekend. I just basically drew a line across southern New Jersey and said, if you're north of there, you're probably going to be in the 70s. And as you said, it would not be a surprise if you barely get to 70 if you wind up with clouds during the day on the weekend. And then if you're south of that line, you're going to be hot and humid with temperatures up around 90 and some thunderstorms. And then after that goes out, because of what we showed you with the upper trough, we've got another cold front that approaches late Monday, and that stalls out nearby to the system that represents Ida. Of course, at this point is well inland. And by the way, on that WPC map that we had, on that WPC map that I had up, and I'll bring it up again here, just a moment. But that 5 to 10 inches of rain goes all the way up into the western part of Tennessee. So, and who knows if that winds up being underdone. So this is going to have a lot of impact in different ways. But eventually, the remnant low just kind of gets pulled into that trough. And by the time we get to Tuesday night and Wednesday, at least if the GFS has been correct for a few runs here, Joe, it's got a soaking rain from West Virginia, Northern Virginia into Pennsylvania, across New York City, southern New England, lower Hudson Valley. I mean, really kind of goes to town with that. And then here comes the 552 thickness. The 552 thickness, Joe, on Friday with a 1030 high over Lake Superior. Right. And you tell me it ain't going to get cool here.
What a waste of a beautiful, those are the kind of highs that you dream of in the mid and late summer, especially coming off of a long stretch of oppressive humidity and heat. And instead of being able to come all the way down and bring us that great weather, it's just going to slide off to the north. And a lot of the cool, dry, the dry.
No, the one at the end of the week, though, the first one, yeah, but the one at the end of the week with that trough that goes all the way down at the end of next week, that goes all the way down into Georgia. I pulled up look at the dew point map. 40 dew points all the way down into almost to southern Georgia.
Right.
40 dew points.
Right. If somebody out there will say, I sweltered through the heat and the humidity and all this sort of thing, and now I get ready to make all my big plans for Labor Day weekend, and what happens? The temperatures don't go much above 75.
Yeah, at least it's just for less. I know it's early in the game here. This is out through day 7. We're talking about day 7 and day 8 now on this. But that's a really impressive shot of cool air. If we're talking about that kind of an upper trough setting up in the eastern part of the United States, it has to get cool. And as far as the actual temperatures are concerned, might as well take a look at the 2-meter temperatures. This is nice. So you're gonna love this. I gotta bring this up on a close-up. Where did the summer go? So if this is correct, Joe, by Thursday morning, it's got 40s. Much of upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, down into West Virginia, temperatures in the 40s, and then only back to maybe the low 70s in the afternoon. And then Friday morning, my God, it's got 40s all the way down into western North Carolina by Friday morning of next week. And it's got 44, I guess that would be Albany, 51 for whatever spot that is just west of New York City. This will be a nice cool air mass if it verifies. And it might be a little bit too early to figure that out, but it's just kind of interesting how the upper air seems to be evolving with troughing coming back into the eastern part of the United States.
Sure, there are a few people in Ontario and Quebec by the end of next week that are saying to themselves, "Oh, here it comes. Here comes the cool weather. The cold weather's already here." They do think that. I remember when Renata and I were on our honeymoon. We're married on September 1st, and we stayed at a bed and breakfast. And the woman and this was just outside of Toronto, and I still remember it was a little bit cool, a little chilly, and like I said to her, I said, "Boy, it's nice and refreshing." He says, "Oh, it's getting cold already." I guess if you're in Canada, you just can't bear the thought of having to deal with those frigid readings so early in the season. But yeah, that's a nice outbreak, though. It'll be a nice a cheerful change from the humdrum, hot weather, sticky weather fare that we've been putting up with for all of these days. And thank you very much to Mr. Pravinsky, who also hit super chats tonight.
Thank you, Leon, and thank you to Robert Russo. So let's run through quickly. Let's do a Briller Jeopardy for tonight, Joe, and then we could talk about how we're going to cover this over the next couple of days, because I don't think we've come back just for one day and then we're going to take the next 2 days off.
Oh, I do that.
No,
Wow, no.
I understand. Okay, so the TV show debuts. We've got a list of these, Joe. And
I had one for you.
Oh, you have one for me?
I had one for you, but you want to toss a coin and see who goes first? Or
all right, heads I win, tails you lose.
All right, if you want to give it to me, you can give it to me. I can hold on to this.
All right, you hold on to that. We'll do that one tomorrow. So here we'll start with let's run through these. Naked City.
Naked City. I get what, a 3-year?
You get a 3-year window.
A 3-year window, whatever. Naked City. I remember growing up, and I remember when I was 1961.
Well, you're within the 3-year margin of error, Joe. 1958. Hopalong Cassidy.
Oh, God. Now we're going way back. How about that was on radio. So I'm sure it was one of the first TV shows that they came up with to amuse the young people, the children. How about 1950?
Within the 3-year margin of error, 1952. Mr. Peepers with Wally Cox.
Wally Cox. Dear old, who eventually would become an underdog. 1955?
Within the 3-year margin of error, 1952, Land of the Giants.
1968.
On the nose, so you could reach into Bob Barker's pocket and get that $100. Schoolhouse Rock.
That came, all right, 1970, 70, I'm struggling here, Joe. 72.
The 1 year off, Joe, 73. Spencer for Hire.
Oh, I think that was a 1980 show. 1980, 83.
Within the margin of error, 85. Barney Miller.
19. I should know this. I actually went to the Westbury Music Fair and saw Hal Linden, who was a very good singer, by the way. 19. Barney Miller. Oh, ouch. I'll say 1977.
Barney Miller, 1975, within the margin of error. The Cisco Kid.
That was a radio show too. And when did we say that that Hopalong Cassidy debuted? 1952.
Yes, you did. 52.
I'm going to say 1952 for the Cisco Kid.
No, within the margin of error, 1950. Welcome Back, Kotter.
1970. Oh, I remember this. 1970. Blah 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 blah. It's either 74 or 75. I'll say 74.
And you should have said 75 to hit it on the nose, and you could have reached it to Bob Barker's other pocket to get that $100. And last but not least, the Phil Silvers Show.
Oh, it's Sergeant Bilko. 1950. 58 or 50. Well, I'll say 58. 1958.
Within the 3-year margin of error on the 3rd year, 19 double nickels, 1955. And here's your bonus, Joe. The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle.
19. Well, I know I'm going to get within the 3-year period if I say 1960. I'll say 1960 or 61. I'll say 1960.
Yeah, 60's the right one. Well, it got you closer. 1959. So you did brilliantly tonight. I mean, brilliantly. Very good. You got them. You got them all, and Bob Barker's out about $200, and we're all set. So we're going to do uh, tomorrow night and Saturday. I think you're okay with that. No, nothing in the way.
I'm going to be away on Saturday. So
Okay, so I will solo on Saturday then. So we'll be here tomorrow.
You know, it's possible. It's possible. And thinking about it, it's possible that I will be here at the prescribed 7:30 time. It's possible.
Okay. Well, I
but again,
mean,
it
we
may
can
not be.
move the show around. We're not married to 7:30 on Saturday, so I mean, we can move the show around if it's a little later.
I'll have a handle on. I'll have a handle on that maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
But yeah, but we're here tomorrow.
Okay, great. So tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern Time, Saturday, sometime Saturday evening. Bear that in mind. We'll have our Sunday morning show at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, and then back on Monday with whatever is going on Idlewise Aftermath and whatever it's doing inland, and whether we're going to get into the rains from that for the middle of next week. Just really, well, we got a few minutes. Any postpartum on, or postmortem? Postpartum. Postmortem? I went through enough postpartum. Postmortem on Henri.
No, I think it fairly well came to, we said that, and you yourself even said that it was going to be much more of a rainmaker than a wind maker, and it certainly was every bit of that. And we did see, those tremendous rainfall totals, in part due to those renegade
that upper low,
rogue,
yeah, and
those rogue showers and storms on Saturday night. That was amazing, including. Now, let me make sure I'm correct here. It was either between 10 and 11 or 11 and 12 on Saturday evening. The greatest amount of rain that has ever been recorded at Central Park in a time span of 1 hour. I think they said 1.95
Yes, I saw
inches.
that. I saw that. That was
unbelievable.
That was an interesting record that got broken and all of that. That's torrential. I mean, that certainly is torrential. I am also going to try, I can't promise anything, but I'm going to try to get a former colleague of mine to come on. So keep your fingers crossed. Let's see if I can pull this off. No guarantees from the management here. A colleague of mine who I worked with many years ago, I think he would be perfect for what's going on. So thanks everybody for being here and putting up with us and letting us have 3 days off. It's nice. People get, where you guys are off? How come there's no show? Because we needed a break. And I feel very recharged from after last weekend. And the only thing I would add, by the way, the only thing I would add about, the postmortem with Henri is that, as usual with these storms, I often find it's amazing how many armchair quarterbacks there are out there that quarterback weather outcomes. But then you also have the slew of people who are really just so utterly disappointed that they didn't get the disaster that they were hoping for. And to those people, I would just say, well, maybe next time, maybe the next time we get a tropical storm or a hurricane moving up the East Coast, you'll get the destruction that you want, okay? And that's probably, that's probably the most frustrating thing about it. Considering after what happened with Hurricane Sandy and Irene and a few others, should be darn happy that things turned out the way they did from the standpoint of the wind. And that's all I have to say about it. And yes, thankfully, we kind of leaned away from the wind angle and played the rain angle more the way it was looking, and that's how it worked out. So
absolutely. Well, I'm just so happy that I didn't lose my power, and we really didn't see. I mean, up here where I am, we had maybe about 3.5 inches of rain, so we didn't have anything astonishing in terms of rainfall totals, and it's on to the next storm. And this time, hopefully, it will not be a terrible situation for the folks, our friends down in Louisiana. But we'll be watching it and we'll be talking about it, and you'll get all the information right here on the Joe and Joe Show. Is JJ with you tonight, or?
He's here, but he's sleeping somewhere. So,
Of course.
but he is with me, and I'll be up here for all of next week and probably most of the week after that. I got to stay a little longer. So, let's talk some more off camera, off camera, as they say.
Yes.
All right, folks. Thanks for being here. Tomorrow night, 7:30 Eastern Time. We'll have all the latest on Tropical Storm Ida and everything else that's going on as far as the local weekend weather is concerned for eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England and nearby surrounding areas. Good night, everybody.
Nighty night.